Welcome, foolish mortals, to Halloween Treats, presented by the Look Back Machine. For the entire month of October, we bring you 31 episodes on 31 flicks. So sit back and relax on your broomstick. We have blood-curdling boogeyman and sadistic serial killers. From castles to were-rabbits to spine-chilling spine-tinglers. Oh, but that's not all. It's only a bit. There's also Dahmer, Dracula, and Wallace and Gromit. So turn down the lights and turn up the sound. And ready your heart, for it's about to pound. Because there's Halloween film history abound. Happy Halloween from the Look Back Machine. And now for 4 fast facts from Ada Ruiz and Greg Gonzalez of the LA Meekly podcast.
Let's do the big guy, John Wayne Gacy.
He was an artist. During his sentence on death row, he painted a lot of weird things, ranging from portraits of other serial killers, as well as cartoons and birds. He even made a series of self-portraits as Pogo the Clown. They were so weird. We did a lot of Seven Dwarfs drawings, like no Snow White, just the Seven Dwarfs.
His execution was almost botched. Before it all began, the chemicals used to perform his execution solidified and clogged the IV tubes. It took a whole 10 minutes for its execution team to fix the issue, and after that, Gacy's execution resumed. His last meal included a Diet Coke.
He was the go-to handyman while behind bars. Despite being on death row, the security guards surrounding Gacy were so chill with him that they allowed him to carry sharp tools for maintenance work. He became a prisoner's handyman.
He had an infamous rope and handcuff trick to lure his victims. For his rope trick, he would turn the length of rope and piece of string into a tourniquet. The bodies of the victims were found with a tourniquet around their necks.
For his second act, the handcuff trick, he placed handcuffs on the boys who were under the impression that it was a magic trick,
only to find out that they were real handcuffs.
Mark Holton was most famous for his portrayal of the villain in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Francis Buxton.
Look, Francis.
Today is my birthday, and my father said I can have anything I want.
Good for you and your father.
So guess what I want? A new brain. No, you're fired.
That is, if you can say Pee-wee has an actual villain. Buxton is light, silly, and over the top. In 2003, Holton signed on to play John Wayne Gacy, a man who murdered and buried many of his young victims underneath his house. It would end up being the most difficult role of his career. However, Holton is incredible in the role. He plays the menacing degenerate without allowing the audience to identify with him. And by the end of the film, when you look up the real John Gacy's face, you expect to see Holton. He's that good. The man who casted him was director Clive Saunders, who was known mostly for his experimental theater at the time, and it would be his first time directing a full-length movie. Everyone was a bit out of their element, and it was a film about a serial killer. So what could possibly go wrong? Director, Clive Saunders.
Well, I was there in L.A. I made a short, as I said in the story. I was doing this. I'd done a lot of Fringe theater, and I came off the London Fringe, and I was doing Bukowski stories here in London. Someone handed me a book of Bukowski short stories when I was in L.A. because I come and going from L.A. I read one of his book of short stories, and I put them on here with the London Fringe, and it just kept rolling and transferring. And then I had to stop doing it because in one of the stories was I had to fuck a mannequin. It was Love for 70/50, and it's just one of those things I did in my youth that sort of followed me around everywhere. It was like, every time I got a job, it was, bring the mannequin with you. I couldn't get any other acting work. I was a prisoner of trapped in like a Groundhog Day of this Bukowski story. So when I did get to Hollywood, I shot the film as a short just in the late 90s, just to get it out of my craw and move on, because I got another actor to do it, and this short film really did some damage. It was interesting because we screened it on Hollywood Boulevard at the Vogue Theater, which was a really run-down theater, and like half of LA turned up, probably because we put the word out there was free wine. But from that film, the producer, Susan Rogers, my friend, who we came out of the theater scene together, she was dating the producer of Dharma. And that's when I became aware they were doing all these real-life serial killer things. And she said to me, Susan, I want to bring Larry Rattler down and show him this film that's screening tonight in Santa Monica, because they need a director and I put your name up for it. And I said, that's really nice of you, thank you. And Larry liked what he saw. He saw I could put a film together. And I was up against the guy that was just coming out of porno. And he'd show a lot of high-end porno. And it was me and him. And I'd come from like the opposite end, sort of, off-Broadway and that kind of stuff. And he'd come from porno. But we got on well. And we were up for this part. Eventually they went with me. And they offered me, I guess, as Dharma was doing well, they needed. This was obviously a follow-up cash-in from the same company, which was funded by Blockbuster. Then I was offered to direct and rewrite the script, because I read the script and it was written by another guy, and I couldn't get my head around it. It wasn't my thing. Any director's going to do that. They're going to see it their own way. So they gave me a few weeks to rewrite it, and I did. And I can't actually remember his script. Whatever he would have written, I probably would have, torn it up and gone my own way, because you got to live and die by your own gun. You got to make your own choice. So my view of it was, it didn't really explain nothing, and it was obviously a more genre horror flick. There was a lot of killing, and then obviously because it's a serial killer film, but I didn't approach it from that way. I wanted to approach it from a different angle because of the sensitivity issue. Gacy's family, victims of the family, probably still around, probably my age. I was very uneasy about using the kill thrill count of a lot of these films, which I felt the pressure was on. I was obviously suggested by the producers, make it juicy. They wanted a lot of blood on the tracks, and I didn't want that. I thought maybe there's another way of making a film that works, that doesn't necessarily have to have a high gore count. That's how I approached it, and I rewrote it from a completely different angle. I thought, well, why did these kids, why did no one come looking for them? Why did he get away with killing 33 kids, I mean, he's pretty much Illinois' most famous serial killer, It's like, surely, if you're going to bury all those kids in your crawl space, someone's got to come sniffing, there's got to be a residual smell. So I went on that level, and then I realized, well, he's picking up really vulnerable teenagers, runaways, guys who were hooking from the Greyhound stations, but they kind of intimated that they didn't want me to rock any boat. They wanted me just to deliver a cash-in movie, a follow-up to Dharma. And I don't think they liked Dharma, but Jacobson had financial independence on that. He only took a portion of Blockbuster money, so he could resist their calls to tamper with the script and the edit. So I think he had his funds independently. I didn't have that luxury. I just basically had people not even telling me what to do. I had this sort of vacuum.
Actor Mark Holton.
Well, I must warn you that that is the hardest film I've ever done, and the only time I have ever had a disagreement with anyone in my career. So you may get an earful today. Well, I got a casting call, and I knew the casting director, and it was for a leading role of a murderer, unlike all the other roles that I have played in comedies. So I went to, there were two auditions, one with the director, and then there was a callback of 4 or 5 actors, and they chose me. And that's pretty much, it was a pretty fast decision. The material I was given to audition with, of course, pretty much dictated what I did in the audition. I don't remember being stopped and asked to change anything. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, I'm old enough to where I'd lived through that period of time. And there had been, several books and stories. I believe there was at least one motion picture out there. I think it might have been a made-for-TV movie with Brian Dennehy. I knew the story. It wasn't something to where I had to, delve into, go to the public library and start, shuffling through books or whatever. Speaking of the library, this might be interesting. The first production meeting, somebody on the crew had gone by the Hollywood library and checked out a book that had just come out. That, of course, even by then, there had been billions of books, it seemed like, written about Gacy, and one had just been released, or the most recent release was in the library, and they checked it out, and it was laying on a big table in the room where we had our production meeting. And I opened the book, brand new, and there is a hand-drawn picture in 2 colors of ink and pencil done by 3 people. The picture was a naked Gacy on his knees, a diminutive character in front of him in another color, and then someone had drawn a rope around the kid's neck and connected it back to Gacy's hands. It was a very crude drawing, but it was clearly playing what these crazy people were going for. And then someone else had written in real wavy letters across the top of it, "Dreams." And I went, "Oh my God!" And I looked to see how many times this thing had been checked out, and it had only been checked out 3 times. So I slammed the book shut, and I didn't want to touch it anymore. I think I went and washed my hands and went, "Oh my God, this isn't a book. This is like, I don't know." That's the only thing. That was my first impression. Anything I had looked at, I was wanting to read the book, but after that I went, "God, I can't even touch the damn thing." I didn't want the film to be a documentary, a how-to guide by any means. And that was one of the things I was worried about. And of course, if it wasn't for the film, they would have had plenty of other material to feast on. These crazy people. As long as hopefully they don't act on it. Had 2 small children, and I've jokingly said that at the end of the day, I felt like I needed to go home and scrub my brain out with a toilet brush. And of course, I was going home to 2 little boys and a wife. On the way, I'm just going, "Oh my God, this is, at the end of the day, you have to put work aside." But I don't know. It was pretty rough some days. Just the thought of immersing myself another millimeter into that role, and I just couldn't get to a certain point, and there's just no frame of reference.
I submitted the script, and the company that was producing it on behalf of Blockbuster, they didn't fucking read it. They was like, "Oh, this sounds good." They kind of smelt it and lifted, how they do, these producers. "Yeah, that looks good." But no one actually deconstructed what I was doing. So I thought I had green light, and it wasn't really until, people came up to me in the shoot going, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" Well, if you read the script, it's and then they started getting worried that I was going rogue, which I wasn't, because I'd written the screenplay and I assumed they'd signed off on it. But with these low budget companies, they're doing 2 or 3 films at a time. They're rushing them out. They're shoveling shit, really. They're just trying to make money quick, and it's not about quality control. So, as a guy that had came out of nowhere, really, just out of doing a couple of shorts, I just thought, let me tell the story as I see it, which is, nobody really gave a fuck about these kids. That's why he did it. I mean, my story starts really with him in a motel, going just for a pickup. It goes wrong, and there's a scuffle over money, and he kills this kid, and he doesn't do anything for 5 years. So he's obviously been thinking about it. And within that 5 years, that is the gestation of a serial killer, because he obviously thought about it. take. But I thought, well, if there's a gap between 5 years, you know, and then he got this Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. And he didn't kill anyone during that time either, although he did have problems with, you know, trying to fuck his staff and stuff like that. But, you know, he was known as a scumbag, but no one knew him as a killer because he only killed one kid, and then that we know of, or, you know. So I assumed, you know, there was this period where he just thought about it and then perfected it in his mind, and you know, who cares about these kids? The parents don't. Nobody cares. I can do what I want. That was the hardest point, what tone to hit, but which, you know, obviously you have to balance the fact that it's a real life killer with real life victims. The survivors are still around, and, you know, yeah. Some of these serial killer films, they didn't even take that into account, and that bothered me. So I talked to David Jacobson, and we went out and we had some drinks, and we talked about it. And he had the same thoughts about his, you know, responsibility as a filmmaker. Look, everyone knows you're making an exploitation film. No one can plead the fifth. You know, it's like it is what it says on the tin. With filmmakers, sometimes you get thrown stuff like this. You can't cop out, you know, that you're a saint. You know, we're all guilty as fuck. You know, we're all part of the same system where they're trying to. And, I'm a director, and I was trying to get some form of. I have to look. On the one hand, there's pressure to make an entertaining film that's going to sell, that's going to be renting at the blockbuster video stores, which is pretty much what it was in those days. They were commissioning their own films to fill up their own shelves. So I couldn't claim, but I did start fighting them early because they started sending ridiculous memos about what I could and couldn't do, which I wasn't even told why. I needed to know why so that I could figure out what not to do next time. You know, I wouldn't get any memo other than don't do this, say that, can't say that. You know, there was a thing I told Matthew about the little girls who have to stand on the toilet when they see the bugs coming up through the plug hole. And then we got this memo from Blockbuster saying you can't have, you know, underage girls standing on toilets. And it was like, what the fuck does that mean? I mean, why? First, where is this coming from and why? You know, it's like, where can they stand? You know, but I didn't get anything other than you can, you can't. And there was stuff a lot like that. Didn't make, because I'm British. I don't get it. I didn't get it then. I do now because I'm older. But you know. The politics of it, obviously, you know, was confusing to me. But then I realized what I was up against, and it angered me, and then I got a little combative. But I was putting humor in there, and to lighten it, I need a bit of levity because I like to try and shift genres. I try and lure people in with a few, you know, but that was all pulled out. Everything was pulled out. So. What you see is a pretty much a mutilated version. The ending is different. Everything's different, but you see the end result, and then one day maybe I'll get my version out or not. But you know, I was, as I said, I got into a few weeks of edit, and the next thing I know, I was out. Another guy opened the door of the edit room, and he looked at me and was like, "This guy was a good foot taller than me." And he looked down and he looked at me and said, "You're not required, man." I was, oh, okay, I'll go to the movies today, you know. And then when I saw the end result, obviously I was a little disappointed, to say the least. Really, I remember after that film, I just left town. I just was disappointed, and I just wanted to get out. So
there were 2 days that were particularly crazy, and I'll tell you about both of them. There was a scene where Gacy is dumping a body in a park, or we used the park as the location. And it came time for the location change. Of course, this is a low-budget film. And they said, hey, Mark, would you mind driving your camera car or your car, you know, for the film to this location and just following us? Well, we left in the middle of rush hour in L.A., trying to find this park that I had been to once or twice, but never from the opposite direction, and from a series of freeways that I was unfamiliar with. And about 5 minutes in, and I realized I'm in a vehicle. I have no ID, no driver's license, and I have, for all intents and purposes, open containers in the vehicle. and I have a bag full of prescription drugs that were from a prop warehouse, but they all had different names on them. I went, what? This would not look good to a law enforcement officer. And I got lost. I was like 15 or 20 minutes late getting there, but it was just like, this is ridiculous. I mean, yeah, but what did you say at the time? You know, you want to get the film made. No, hell no, I'm not going to do it. There were days like with the roaches, the Madagascar hissing cockroaches and crawling through them. That was a fun day. But I actually, the Wrangler gave me a couple of those, and I took them home to my kids. And at some point, I looked at them. The boys were gone, and I went, now at some point, are these things going to lay eggs? And are there going to be babies? So they went away. They got a burial at sea in the incinerator. Nasty, nasty creatures anyway. The hardest day for me, and it almost ended the film for me. It's a scene where Gacy is on the couch, and he's hearing voices. Got the scene with Charlie Weber. Charlie Weber's at the other end of the couch, and Gacy's spacing out. And he's hearing voices. He's having delusions. He's on drugs and drunk. And just out of frame, there was a tall A-frame ladder that they used to, change the lighting. And the director had climbed up the ladder. And during the first take, he took out a book of paper matches. And I don't know if you remember, but you could take the match out and put your fingertip on it and slide it across the striker, and it would fly through the air on fire. Well, he launches one of these things at the couch with Charlie and I sitting there. And the cameraman he can't see him. He's got his eye on the scene. And he yells, cut. He goes, I got some kind of a flare. We lost the light or something. And then the director went off on him and said, don't you ever yell cut on my picture. I'm the only one that can yell cut. Who said that? We got through that. And then he had some kind of a little wind-up toy that played the Jack in the Box tune. And he starts playing this thing while we're doing dialogue. And the sound guy goes, I'm getting really, somebody's playing music on the set or something. This is not clean. Well, he goes off on him. And finally, I had it. I'd had matches thrown at me, then that, and I stood up and I said, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to smoke a cigarette. And I don't want you to come out there. It would not be a good idea for you to follow me. When I come back, we'll talk. And I walked out. Somebody ran over and threw the big, giant door open. And I went outside, and a couple of seconds later, Charlie came out there, just, I guess, for moral support. And I turned around and I looked back at how many people were on that crew and cast. And we were far enough into the picture to where I said, there's no way I can walk away from this thing. I can't do that to these people. But I was very, very, very close to bailing on it just from that. Anyway, I made it through the picture. And it just seemed like from that point on, there was a lot of unneeded paranoia. At one point, the producers wanted the director to back off the sexual stuff, and that set him off. And he had everybody dressing the set with like 2 oranges and a gourd, and putting all this stuff on the tabletop. And then in the middle of a scene, Jolene, who played my wife, comes out with this big black dildo. And of course, I've made it on film. What do you do? It's already in the can. And there was just crazy stuff like that. But I came from a different, I guess, experimental theater world or whatever. I never got an explanation. The only thing I think I got out of him was, go ahead, fight me. I want you to fight me. That didn't happen, and if it had, I might still be doing time right now. So, yeah, it's the hardest film I've ever done.
I was green. It was my first real film, and, I'd made mistakes. We had different problems on the set, I mean, in terms of personality clash, but that was cultural more than anything else. And look at the film. I saw it a few years ago. I thought, wow, the guy's good.
And one of my biggest regrets is that they didn't use John Wayne Gacy's final words on this earth when they executed him. And they had the jail cell. All they had to do was put me on a gurney and have me say the line. John Wayne Gacy's last words on this earth were, "Kiss my ass." Fade to black. I wish that had been in there. I had a very strange encounter at a convention. Actually, the first convention I went to in Indianapolis, and this young man, I would say young man, younger than me, but right about the age of someone that would have known Gacy in his late teens or early 20s. And the convention was ending, and he came by and said, "I wanted you to know that I thought you did a great job in Gacy." I said, "Thank you very much." He said, "I knew John Wayne Gacy. In fact, I saw him, I think he said the last 3 or 4 times, he saw him 3 or 4 times in prison before they executed him. So, he's got my ear." So he mentions the last time he saw Gacy, I guess they had them on video. Now, I don't know if this really happened or not, but it seemed pretty real to him, where Gacy was in an interview room, and of course the guards would watch when he had a visitor, and he and a friend, I don't know how the friend fit into this, came in there and were talking with him, and he said he knew, Gacy knew where the edge of the frame was on the camera and positioned him in that spot. And I'm all ears, of course, still. And then it got a little bit too graphic, and I can't be as graphic as it was, but it something about Gacy shoving his hand down the back of his pants, and then the word insertion was used. And I said, "Okay, we're done." And I don't know if that's something that actually happened, or something that he wished had happened. It really creeped me out. And if you're listening out there, you really creeped me out. Most of the people that come up to me somewhere in the conversation, and especially women, they'll say, I'm sorry, I haven't seen Gacy. I just couldn't bring myself to see it because I just couldn't. I couldn't do it because you'll always be Francis Buxton, or you'll be Chubby from Teen Wolf, and that was part of my childhood. So I haven't watched it because of that, which kind of makes sense. And I have members of my family that haven't seen it for the same reason. They just don't want to see me in that light. There have been times that I've wondered, should I have taken the role? But it's very difficult to turn something down, when you're a character actor and you're playing supporting roles, and you have a chance to play a leading role, and you have a family of 4 to support. It's kind of hard to say, "Nah, I'll pass." It just it wasn't the right thing to do at the time, and I can second guess it all I want, but it's a little late now.
Thanks for listening to Halloween Treats, presented by the Look Back Machine. Stay tuned for the entire month of October for an episode every single day till November.
This is Greg Gonzalez. Hello. Hi. Let's see. If you like the sound of my voice, you can listen to me on my own podcast, LA Meekly, Meekly. We cover LA history, subject by subject. We've covered John Unterberger and Richard Ramirez in our Cecil Hotel episode, which is one of our Creepy Christmas Haunted Hanukkah episodes. Check us out on iTunes Podcast, on Spotify. You can check us out on our YouTube channel. We are on Instagram at LA_Meekly and on Twitter at LA Meekly. Yay! I'm so business.